During the genocide in Rwanda in 1994, 800,000 Tutsi people were killed by the Rwandan military. If all people in Denver were killed, that would still be 85,000 less deaths than during the Rwandan genocide. For 100 days, innocent citizens, including women, children, and elderly people, had their basic human rights of life, liberty, and security violated by the Rwandan military. At the beginning, people had hope for intervention, as U.S. troops patrolled Kigali, the capital of Rwanda. Under the 1948 Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of Genocide, the international community had a responsibility to provide military aid to end any violence that would lead to genocide. And as a world leader of military aid, in Africa specifically, the U.S. had an even more essential obligation to help the Rwandan people. During World War I, in 1916, Belgium overtook German-controlled Rwanda. This leadership was the start of ethnic conflict. For centuries before, the primary ethnicities in Rwanda, Hutus and Tutsis, had lived peacefully as pre-colonialism of Africa was divided by tribal lines. As the Belgians introduced strict division of the two ethnicities, riots against the Tutsi monarchy, which the Belgians had put into leadership, began. In response to the riots, Belgian authorities held local elections to establish a new government. Since Hutus were the ethnic majority, it is no surprise that these elections resulted in a Hutu-dominated government. During these elections, Rwanda also became an independent republic under the Hutu Emancipation Party, which was led by Gagwa Kayibanda. Nearly a decade later, a Hutu-led dictatorship under the leadership of Juvenal Habyarimana seized power in Rwanda, increasing the tensions between Hutus and Tutsis. After 3 years of fighting between exiled Tutsis and the Rwandan military, a UN-sponsored agreement known as the Arusha Accords was meant to disarm, demobilize, and reintegrate the exiled Tutsis into the Rwandan government. As part of this agreement, the international community was also supposed to provide a neutral force to help implement the peace accords. However, the international community failed to provide the funding that they had promised, and the demobilization program was never implemented. On April 6, 1994, Rwandan President Juvenal Habyarimana and Cyprian Ntaryamira from Burundi were killed in a plane crash. 24 hours later, on April 7th, soldiers of the Rwandan military began the 100-day killing spree.
It was one of our neighbors' house that was being burnt. I remember talking to my stepmother, I said, "What is this?" She said, "Don't ask. Tonight you have to wear all your clothes, as many as you can, and you're all going to sleep under the bed." So we did. We started going under the bed with a lot of clothes on, with so much fear.
People being fed to these dogs and dog eating them and sitting, being frightened, knowing that if they see me, they will, bite me. I was so terrified.
ahita nkubita umuhoro niho ahangaha nyine mubona ankubita umuhoro mu mutwe. Kuva icyo gihe sinongeye kumva.
I remember I was so afraid. I was like, you know what? I'm not even gonna watch my mother died or my siblings died. I'm just gonna go in the first line. I'm just gonna be killed first.
These horrific stories demonstrate the clear violations of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of Genocide. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, proclaimed at the 1948 Paris General Assembly, defines international rights and responsibilities that are universally protected for all people. Article 1 of the Declaration declares, "All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in the spirit of brotherhood." Sadly, in Rwanda, neighbors would murder neighbors, family would murder family, and friends would murder friends. There was betrayal and zero consideration for the basic rights that all people deserved. Again, Article 3 of the Declaration underscores that everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of person. When people were murdered, they lost their life. When they were systematically raped, they lost their liberty. And when they were forced to flee their homes to survive, they lost their security. also proclaimed during the Paris General Assembly in 1948, following World War II, in which Nazis killed over 11 million people, the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of Genocide defined genocide as a crime under international humanitarian law. Both of these proclamations were disregarded by the Rwandan military during the Rwandan genocide, and that resulted in the rape of thousands of women and girls and the deaths of 800,000 people. Since the violations of people's basic human rights were so apparent during the genocide, the U.S. had a moral and legal responsibility to provide military assistance. The Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of Genocide labeled genocide as a crime whether committed in time of war or in time of peace. When the genocide in Rwanda occurred, the U.S., as a world leader in military aid at that time, had a responsibility to provide international assistance. The preamble to this document states that international cooperation is required. The first article of the convention also says that the contracting parties confirm that genocide is a crime under international law which they undertake to prevent and to punish. This means that the U.S. had a legal obligation to cooperate internationally and prevent the Rwandan genocide under this convention. In 1991, during his State of the Union address, George H.W. Bush said,
"The world can therefore seize this opportunity to fulfill the long-held promise of a new world order, where brutality will go unrewarded and aggression will meet collective resistance. Yes, the United States bears a major share of leadership in this effort."
Bill Clinton, the president during the genocide, inherited this idea, continuing an operation in Somalia when Bush's term ended. So if the U.S. clearly had the moral means to support UN troops in Rwanda, why didn't they? It comes down to a short 15 hours in Somalia just 6 months before the genocide. The Battle of Mogadishu, better known as Black Hawk Down, began as a mission to capture leaders in the Somalia National Alliance, led by warlord Mohammed Farah Aidid. While it was initially successful, 2 Black Hawk helicopters were shot down by Somali forces, causing a bloody battle between a few U.S. soldiers and SNA soldiers. In the end, 18 American soldiers and 1,000 Somalis died during the battle. This made the U.S. government and President Clinton more wary of deploying troops in Rwanda, trading the lives of 800,000 Tutsi people for just 18 U.S. Army soldiers that died in Somalia. The impact of U.S. inaction was felt immediately across Rwanda when the UN withdrew troops, leaving people in Rwanda with a feeling of hopelessness and betrayal.
We believed in those brave soldiers.
Imagine our panic, he said, when one afternoon the Belgian soldiers packed up to leave.
Even former President Bill Clinton visited Rwanda and formally apologized on behalf of the U.S. and the rest of the international community, stating,
"The international community, together with nations in Africa, must bear its share of responsibility for this tragedy as well."
In terms of the long-term impact from the Rwandan genocide, thousands of women contracted AIDS, thousands of children were orphaned, and 800,000 people died, all over the course of 100 days. While still recognizing the repulsiveness of this genocide, it's important to note that this event brought more attention to the dangers of staying silent and not taking responsibility to stop clear violations of people's human rights. The Rwandan genocide was also one of the leading factors in the creation of the International Criminal Court, founded in 2002 in Rome, which allows justice to be brought to the perpetrators of the gravest crimes of concern to the international community: genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and the crime of aggression. The development of the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda was also a direct result of the genocide. This tribunal tried perpetrators of the genocide, giving them a small punishment when compared to what they did to the Tutsi people. Both of these organizations have allowed people that committed crimes during the Rwandan genocide and other humanitarian crises to be brought to justice and receive the retribution they deserve. Looking back on the genocide in Rwanda against the Tutsis in 1994, we mourn the hundreds of thousands of victims while acknowledging that this event was not inevitable, it could have been prevented, and without intervention, it will be repeated.